Have you ever noticed that some empathetic people chase love, while others seem to make emotionally unavailable people suddenly pay attention? It's a strange paradox. The more someone desperately tries to prove their love, the more an avoidant partner pulls away. But then there's a different kind of empath, someone deeply caring, emotionally intelligent, yet impossible to manipulate. Their presence creates curiosity instead of pressure, respect instead of avoidance. Today, we're exploring the one empath type that often leaves avoidant personalities questioning everything they thought they wanted, not because they play games, but because they understand a truth that changes the entire dynamic of attraction. Most people assume that being empathetic means giving more, trying harder, and proving your love through endless patience. They believe that if someone is pulling away emotionally, the answer is to chase them with even more affection, more understanding, and more reassurance. But there is a different kind of empath, one who completely changes the dynamic of a relationship. This person feels emotions deeply, cares sincerely, and loves wholeheartedly, yet never confuses love with the need to pursue someone who is running away. They understand that genuine connection cannot be forced and that affection loses its value when it comes from fear instead of choice. When an avoidant person begins to create distance, many people react with panic. They send multiple messages, ask what they did wrong, replay every conversation in their minds, and desperately search for ways to bring the other person back. The stronger the distance becomes, the harder they chase, believing that persistence is proof of love. Unfortunately, this often creates the exact opposite effect. The avoidant partner feels pressured, overwhelmed, and even more determined to withdraw. What started as an attempt to save the relationship slowly becomes a cycle of pursuit and escape. The emotionally healthy empath approaches the situation differently. Instead of immediately assuming rejection, they remain grounded. They understand that another person's behavior is not always a reflection of their own worth. They allow space without abandoning themselves. They continue with their daily life, focus on their responsibilities, spend time with friends and family, and keep investing in their own happiness. They don't stop caring, but they also don't stop living. This quiet confidence has a surprising effect. It communicates emotional maturity without saying a single word. It tells the other person, I value this connection, but I also value myself. There is no desperation, no emotional bargaining, and no attempt to force intimacy before the other person is ready. That calm energy often feels unfamiliar to someone with avoidant tendencies because they may be used to relationships built around emotional chasing and reassurance. The secure empath knows that love is strongest when it is freely given, not demanded. They recognize that if someone genuinely wants to be close, they will make an effort. If they need time or space, that space can be respected without turning it into a personal crisis. This ability to stay emotionally centered creates an atmosphere where both people have room to breathe instead of feeling trapped by expectations. What makes this type of empath so attractive is not mystery or manipulation, it is authenticity. They are honest about their feelings, but they don't let those feelings control every decision they make. They can miss someone without abandoning their own standards. They can care deeply without sacrificing their dignity. They understand that the healthiest relationships are built by two whole people choosing each other, not by one person constantly trying to convince the other to stay. In that balance of compassion and self-respect lies a quiet strength that often leaves emotionally distant people questioning everything they thought they wanted. When someone becomes emotionally distant, many people immediately assume the worst. A delayed reply, a canceled plan, or a sudden need for space can trigger anxiety and insecurity. The mind starts filling in the blanks with stories of rejection, abandonment, or loss of interest. For those who fear losing the connection, silence becomes unbearable, and they feel compelled to fill it with texts, calls, explanations, or constant attempts to reconnect. But the emotionally healthy empath responds in a very different way. They understand that silence is not always rejection, and they refuse to let another person's temporary distance define their own value. This doesn't mean they ignore their emotions or pretend not to care. They still feel disappointment, uncertainty, and longing just like anyone else. The difference is that they don't allow those emotions to take control of their actions. Instead of chasing immediate reassurance, they create space for understanding. They recognize that every person has moments when they need time alone, when life becomes overwhelming, or when emotions are difficult to process. Rather than assuming the worst, they remain patient without becoming passive and compassionate without becoming dependent. One of the greatest strengths of this kind of empath is that they continue building their own life even when someone else steps back. They don't put their happiness on hold while waiting for another person to return. They keep pursuing their goals, maintaining friendships, enjoying hobbies, and taking care of themselves. Their identity is not built entirely around the relationship, and because of that, temporary distance does not completely shake their sense of self. They understand that a healthy connection should add to their life, not become the only thing that gives it meaning. This emotional independence often surprises avoidant personalities. Many avoidant individuals unconsciously expect others to react with panic when they create distance. They may be accustomed to partners who chase, plead, or demand explanations. When they encounter someone who responds with calm confidence instead, the dynamic changes. The absence of pressure creates room for curiosity. Instead of feeling trapped by expectations, they experience someone who respects both their own emotions and the other person's need for space. The secure empath also knows the importance of observing actions instead of obsessing over silence. They don't spend endless hours trying to decode hidden meanings or create excuses for inconsistent behavior. They simply pay attention to patterns over time. If someone consistently withdraws without communication or effort, they recognize it as valuable information rather than a puzzle that must be solved. This prevents them from becoming trapped in cycles of emotional uncertainty that drain their energy and self-esteem. There is a quiet strength in someone who can remain loving without becoming anxious, patient without becoming desperate, and hopeful without abandoning reality. They understand that real intimacy cannot be built through pressure or fear. It grows through mutual effort, trust, and emotional freedom. By refusing to lose themselves in another person's silence, they protect their own peace while allowing relationships to develop naturally. In doing so, they demonstrate a level of emotional security that is both rare and deeply attractive, proving that true empathy is not about clinging tighter when someone pulls away, but about staying connected to yourself no matter what another person chooses to do. Many empathetic people believe that love means healing others. They see someone's emotional wounds, painful past, or fear of intimacy and immediately feel a responsibility to help. Their natural compassion makes them want to comfort, encourage, and support the people they care about. While kindness is one of the most beautiful human qualities, it can easily become unhealthy when empathy turns into a mission to rescue someone who is unwilling to rescue themselves. The strongest empath understands a difficult truth. You cannot heal another person simply by loving them harder. At the beginning of many relationships, this desire to help can feel noble. An empath may tell themselves that if they are patient enough, understanding enough, or forgiving enough, the other person will eventually open up and become the partner they hope for. They excuse repeated emotional distance, broken promises, or inconsistent behavior because they believe those actions are the result of past pain. Instead of seeing the relationship as it is, they focus on what it could become someday. They invest endless emotional energy into potential while ignoring reality. The emotionally healthy empath chooses a different path. They understand that compassion does not require self-sacrifice. They can care deeply about someone's struggles without making those struggles their personal responsibility. They know that every adult has to make their own decision to grow, seek help, and change unhealthy patterns. No amount of love can force someone to do emotional work they are not ready to do. Real healing comes from within, not from another person's constant effort. Because of this understanding, the secure empath refuses to become a therapist instead of a partner. They listen without trying to solve every problem. They offer support without carrying someone else's emotional burdens on their shoulders. They encourage growth without believing they are responsible for creating it. This balance allows them to remain compassionate while protecting their own emotional well-being. Avoidant personalities often attract rescuers because rescuers stay despite inconsistent behavior, hoping that enough patience will eventually create closeness. But when they meet an empath who refuses to play that role, something changes. Instead of endlessly chasing emotional availability, this empath calmly steps back and allows the other person to take responsibility for their own choices. They don't punish, manipulate, or criticize. They simply recognize that love cannot replace accountability. This approach creates healthier relationships because it is based on equality rather than imbalance. Both people are responsible for their own emotional health and both contribute to building trust and intimacy. The empath no longer feels exhausted from carrying the relationship alone, and the other person is given the opportunity to grow through their own decisions instead of relying on someone else to fix everything for them. The greatest lesson this empath learns is that loving someone does not mean saving them. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is allow another person to face the consequences of their own actions while you continue protecting your own peace. You can wish someone healing, support their journey, and genuinely hope they find happiness without sacrificing your own emotional health in the process. That is not selfishness. It is wisdom. It is the understanding that healthy love is built on mutual responsibility, not one person constantly trying to repair what the other refuses to face. Many people think boundaries create distance in relationships, but healthy boundaries actually create clarity, trust, and respect. They are not walls designed to keep people out. Instead, they are guidelines that show others how you expect to be treated while protecting your emotional well-being. The emotionally healthy empath understands this deeply. They know that kindness does not require accepting behavior that repeatedly causes pain. They can be compassionate without becoming available for mistreatment, and this quiet strength often changes the entire dynamic of a relationship. People who struggle with emotional avoidance sometimes become comfortable with inconsistency. They may disappear for days, cancel plans at the last minute, avoid difficult conversations, or only show affection when it feels convenient. Many partners respond by lowering their standards just to keep the relationship alive. They convince themselves that patience means accepting whatever behavior comes their way, even when it leaves them feeling anxious or unimportant. Over time, they lose confidence and begin settling for less than they truly deserve. The secure empath refuses to follow that pattern. They understand that love should never require abandoning self-respect. When something hurts them, they communicate honestly instead of pretending everything is fine. They don't attack the other person or create unnecessary conflict. Instead, they calmly explain how certain actions affect them and what they need in order to feel valued in the relationship. Their goal is not to control another person's behavior, but to express their own standards with honesty and maturity. What makes these boundaries so powerful is the absence of drama. The healthy empath does not use guilt, manipulation, or emotional games to force someone to change. They do not threaten to leave after every disagreement or use silence as punishment. Their actions are calm, consistent, and respectful. If someone repeatedly ignores their needs or continues unhealthy patterns despite clear communication, they simply stop accepting that treatment. They understand that boundaries are meaningless unless they are supported by action. This creates an unexpected effect on emotionally avoidant people. They may be used to relationships where their distance is tolerated without consequences because the other person fears losing them. But when they encounter someone who values themselves enough to walk away from unhealthy behavior, they are forced to confront the reality of their choices. They realize that genuine love does not mean unlimited access to another person's time, energy, and forgiveness. Respect must be mutual if the relationship is going to survive. Healthy boundaries also protect the empath from becoming emotionally exhausted. Instead of constantly worrying about fixing the relationship, they focus on maintaining their own peace. They understand that they cannot control another person's willingness to communicate, commit, or grow. The only thing they can control is how they respond. By choosing self-respect over endless tolerance, they preserve their emotional energy and create space for healthier connections. The strongest message boundaries send is simple: I care about you, but I also care about myself. That balance is incredibly attractive because it reflects confidence rather than fear. It shows that love can exist alongside standards, and that compassion does not require sacrificing dignity. In the end, people who respect themselves often inspire greater respect from others because they demonstrate that a healthy relationship is built on mutual effort, honesty, and accountability, not on one person endlessly accepting behavior that slowly erodes their sense of worth. One of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships is believing they have to become someone else to be loved. They hide their true opinions, suppress their feelings, and constantly adjust their personality to avoid conflict or rejection. They agree with things they don't actually believe, ignore their own needs, and spend so much time trying to keep the other person happy that they slowly lose touch with who they really are. While this may seem like a way to preserve a relationship, it often creates emotional distance rather than genuine closeness. The emotionally healthy empath understands that real connection can only exist when both people are free to be themselves. Authenticity is not about being perfect or saying whatever comes to mind without consideration. It is about showing up honestly, even when honesty feels uncomfortable. The secure empath does not pretend to enjoy things simply to gain approval, nor do they hide their emotions to appear easygoing. If something makes them happy, they express it. If something hurts them, they communicate it with honesty and respect. They understand that vulnerability is not weakness, but an essential part of building trust. People pleasing often begins with good intentions. Many empathetic individuals naturally want others to feel comfortable and accepted. They avoid disagreements, constantly compromise, and prioritize everyone else's happiness above their own. Over time, however, this habit creates imbalance. They become exhausted from trying to meet impossible expectations while quietly hoping someone will notice their sacrifices. Instead of feeling appreciated, they often feel unseen because they have hidden so much of their authentic self. The secure empath chooses a different approach. They remain kind and compassionate, but they do not abandon their own identity to maintain peace. They have their own interests, values, and dreams, and they allow those parts of themselves to exist openly within the relationship. They don't apologize for having boundaries, opinions, or ambitions. They understand that the right person will appreciate their authenticity rather than expect them to shrink to fit someone else's comfort zone. This authenticity can have a powerful effect on avoidant personalities. Avoidant individuals often feel overwhelmed by emotional pressure or relationships that become overly dependent. When they meet someone who is emotionally open yet deeply connected to their own identity, the dynamic changes. Instead of encountering someone who constantly seeks validation, they meet someone who enjoys the relationship without making it the center of their entire existence. That independence creates both respect and curiosity because it demonstrates confidence rather than insecurity. Being authentic also means accepting that not everyone will stay. The healthy empath understands that honesty sometimes leads to disappointment, disagreement, or even the end of a relationship. But they also know that pretending to be someone else only delays the inevitable. A relationship built on performance can never provide lasting fulfillment because it requires constant acting. True intimacy only develops when both people know the real version of each other. The greatest strength of the secure empath is that they refuse to trade their identity for temporary approval. They know their value does not depend on pleasing everyone around them, and they recognize that love should never require abandoning their own voice. By staying true to themselves, they create relationships based on honesty, mutual respect, and emotional safety. In the end, authenticity becomes their greatest source of attraction because confidence rooted in self-acceptance is far more powerful than perfection, and people are naturally drawn to those who have the courage to be genuinely themselves. Perhaps the greatest strength of the emotionally healthy empath is knowing when it is time to let go. This does not come from a lack of love or compassion. In fact, it often comes from loving deeply, while also understanding that love alone cannot sustain a relationship. Many people stay in unhealthy situations because they believe leaving means giving up, failing, or abandoning someone they care about. They hold on to the hope that if they wait a little longer, try a little harder, or love a little deeper, everything will eventually change. But the secure empath recognizes that a relationship cannot thrive when only one person is carrying its emotional weight. Walking away is rarely an easy decision for someone who is naturally empathetic. They see the pain behind another person's actions and understand the fears and wounds that may be influencing their behavior. They know that emotional avoidance, poor communication, or inconsistency often have deeper causes. However, they also understand that understanding someone's struggles does not mean accepting endless disappointment. Compassion does not require sacrificing your own peace of mind, and kindness should never become an excuse for staying in a relationship that consistently leaves you feeling unseen or unvalued. The healthy empath pays attention to patterns rather than promises. They understand that words have little meaning without consistent action. Someone may say they want closeness, commitment, or change, but if their behavior repeatedly communicates distance, avoidance, or emotional unavailability, the empath accepts that reality instead of clinging to potential. They stop trying to imagine who the other person could become and begin responding to who they are right now. This shift in perspective protects them from becoming trapped in endless cycles of hope and disappointment. Choosing to walk away does not mean they stop caring. They can still wish the other person happiness, healing, and growth while recognizing that those things are no longer their responsibility. They release the belief that they must save the relationship at any cost and instead choose to protect their own emotional health. This decision is not driven by anger or revenge, but by self-respect. They understand that every healthy relationship requires mutual effort, emotional availability, and a willingness from both people to grow together. For avoidant personalities, this can be a powerful wake-up call. They may have become accustomed to partners who endlessly chase them, forgive every inconsistency, and remain available regardless of how little effort they receive in return. When they encounter someone who quietly walks away instead of begging to stay, it disrupts that familiar pattern. They realize that genuine love does not guarantee unlimited chances and that self-respect can be stronger than attachment. The absence of pursuit often creates more reflection than endless chasing ever could. The secure empath leaves with dignity rather than bitterness. They do not seek revenge, spread resentment, or try to prove their worth after the relationship ends. They simply continue moving forward, trusting that peace is more valuable than constant emotional confusion. They understand that being alone is healthier than remaining in a connection that slowly erodes their confidence and happiness. In the end, the strongest form of empathy is not sacrificing yourself for another person, but caring without losing yourself in the process. Knowing when to let go is one of the hardest lessons anyone can learn, yet it is also one of the most freeing. It is the moment when love and self-respect finally stand side by side, reminding us that the healthiest relationships are built not on fear of losing someone, but on two people who freely choose each other every single day.